Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, brought to you by Bet365. We're back in town, and we're back at the Pacific Toyota Dealers Studios. Visit shoptoyota.ca or visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. My name is Dave Verdrelli. I'm joined by Harmon Dial. Monday edition, a post-game edition of Canucks Conversation. Harm, let's start there as the Canucks fall 5-3 to the Seattle Kraken, but overall a pretty decent game, I think, for the Canucks, the roster that they sent.
Yeah, definitely. The Kraken had a lot of their big dogs playing. It was an NHL heavy lineup, whereas the Canucks had, outside of Hedel and Höglander, Sherwood, none of their impact NHLers. So they kept things relatively close. Tolopilo was a big part of that. He was brilliant early on. Unfortunate for Ty Young that he got lit up early. And honestly, a lot of those goals weren't even his fault. You look back at how those plays developed. It was a backdoor tap in. It was a nasty backhander. And then a Yanni Newman one-time blast from the outside. Young didn't really have a chance on a lot of the goals and shots that he faced. And yeah, understandably, the Canucks gave up a lot of chances off the rush, but given the talent disparity between these two teams, they hung around well enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, it's tough for Ty Young to come in cold, right? Like that's the thing. You have your warm up, then you sit for half the game, and then you come in cold. That's always a tough scenario for any goalie. And yeah, they were under siege, especially early in that game when Tolopilo was in net. He did a really good job. It was interesting to hear Adam Foote speak post game about the work that Tolopilo did and how he felt the defense settled in. But yeah, they did have a really young defense core. Now, that's where we find some of the excitement from last night's game as well. Victor Mancini, a star of this game, he is rewarded with a goal, which is always great to see when you play well, but he was good in all three zones. I thought he had a really, really solid game. It was interesting to hear Foote talk post-game about that one because he basically said, yeah, but after he scored, he got a little too excited and started jumping up into plays and being a little too aggressive. And I wanted to touch on that when it comes to another young defenseman, Elias Pettersson, because you and I both were texting each other and we were trying to, we were just talking about the game. And one thing I think we agreed on was that Elias Pettersson was trying to do a little too much to start that game. I think he was very eager about jumping in on the rush. I think he got caught a couple times. I think there were a couple times where he could have got caught, but Seattle couldn't muster up enough control going the other way, but it could have been bad. I thought some of his reads were a little suspect last night.
Yeah, first period, he was with the puck trying to do a little bit too much. There was one play in the neutral zone where he was trying to rush it up, nearly lost the handle, and then was sort of caught. A couple other sequences where I'm used to the DPD of last year, the 28 games in the NHL, where his play with the puck is so crisp. You can trust him on breakouts. And I think to start the game, he was shaking off a little bit of rust. I thought he settled in well in the second half of the game, but agreed, he was maybe trying to do a little bit too much, which is kind of understandable. I'm not going to knock him for that. And then Mancini was brilliant. He was really the standout on the blue line. You can see the discrepancy, right? And I'm sure we'll shift to talking about Tom Willander soon. But Mancini and Willander are both excellent skaters, yet there's such a difference in how that translates to each player's puck moving ability at this stage in their respective careers, where Mancini's older. He's more experienced. He's got a ton of pro games under his belt. And so there's a different level of confidence, assertiveness, and conviction that he has when he goes back for pucks in the defensive zone. He's able to immediately know where forecheckers are going to apply pressure. He knows what routes he can take. He's very decisive and immediately knows whether he can wheel it out, whether he needs to make a quick pass. And you saw how many times was he carrying pucks out of the defensive zone, and not just for zone exits, but turning them into offensive zone entries as well. In the first period as well, you saw him lay the boom, physically aggressive, which is something we saw on Saturday's scrimmage as well. I'm glad that Foote noted, though, that there is still room to sort of rein him in a little bit. And that was, I thought overall it was a high event game for Mancini, and there was a lot more good than there was bad. But there were a couple of plays. There was one where he's out of position defensively and it led to a slot chance against. There was a defensive zone retrieval where he was trying to shove a backhand pass behind the net to his partner because there was no room for him to make a play, but he sort of missed the backhand shovel and the puck was still right there where he left it. And that sort of resulted in a bit of a dangerous look for the Kraken. I think we know that he's got all the physical traits and he can do a lot with the puck, but to earn the trust to be a top 6 defenseman on this team, he's going to have to prove to the coaching staff that he isn't going to make the big mistake. And really, that's what is so important that I think fans kind of underrate is it's not just what you do if you're trying to make a third pair role offensively. It's how much can coaches trust you to be predictable and reliable and not make a turnover or a bad read defensively. And as great as Mancini was last night, and as much as I think that he was better than DPD and Willander in that game, and this really helps his chances of making the team, that's going to be something to keep in mind when it comes to okay, he's made the team, now can he draw into the lineup on a consistent enough basis, is limiting those mistakes.
I've been thinking about his path to the roster, right? A path to the roster, a path to the lineup, and it's going to be one story that I'm really keeping an eye on throughout the rest of this preseason because he's going to get more games and he's going to get more opportunities to stake his claim. And I think last night was a really good start. But again, when the coach is pointing out that there's some stuff that you can work on, usually means that you're close, but it also means that there's something to work on. Okay, we've got a super chat here. All right, this is from Karina in the chat. She said, took my grandma to the game yesterday. Worst decision. She had never seen a hockey game before. Proceeded to boo the Canucks the entire game. By first intermission, she'd learned all the Kraken chants. Wow. Okay, the Canucks did not make a fan yesterday. Of course, when we talk about the roster disparity, it's obvious home team's going to have a better roster than the visiting team, especially this early into the preseason. But we appreciate the super chat, which is, of course, a donation to the BC Mental Health Foundation. You want to make sure your question or comment gets on the show, hit us with a super chat. Proceeds from our super chat go to the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. Okay, assuming Karina's from the Seattle area, will she be taking her grandmother to see Braden Cootes in Seattle Thunderbirds games, or is she going to have to drive up to Vancouver to see Braden Cootes? Because, man, oh man, we talked about Braden Cootes being a camp standout, and he had a really strong game. We've got some audio that we're going to get to afterwards, but I wanted to just talk about Braden Cootes. Again, skating on a line with Kiefer Sherwood and Arshdeep Bains as he did through camp, not looking out of place at all. And the thing that but impressed me the most, aside from the puck skills, aside from everything we knew he could do, was the poise on that goal. I think it was the second one. I can't remember. Anyways, the poise on one of the goals that the Canucks scored, where he kind of holds it at the line, Mancini's, and he feathers a pass through, and then he plays. He's the quarterback on the point, basically on the power play, and passes it back to Mancini. That was great, but again, the moments leading up to that, the sequence leading up to it, where he showed that poise to make a soft touch pass as well, kind of right through a Seattle player. Man, that's confidence that I didn't know he had.
Absolutely. It was nice to see. And I think he's really mature and advanced defensively, more than he necessarily is as an offensive driver, right? We saw him have a terrific back check. I want to say it was in the third period that broke up a dangerous Seattle rush opportunity. Even in zone, you'll notice that he does a pretty good job positionally of patrolling the slot area and using his stick to break up passes that were attempted to Seattle players in the slot. I also think he's a great feel for the puck on defensive zone breakouts, right? Those moments where defenseman's under pressure, he gives it to a centerman. Now, and the centerman has to sort of make a bang, bang play where his ability to execute in that moment is the difference between a clean breakout where you've got an opportunity to advance up the neutral zone with some speed and some pace, and maybe it turns into a zone entry, a dangerous one like it did on Saturday's scrimmage, or if you fumble that opportunity, that's a really costly turnover. It's a high leverage spot, and those are the spots in the ice where I've been impressed by his first touch and his ability to just adjust to NHL pace.
All right, I want to play this clip from Adam Foote because at the end of it, he's asked about Kiefer Sherwood, and he talks about Cootes and Sherwood together and ends it with a very, very interesting quote of, "We'll see what happens." Let's play it, Jacob.
Cootes gets an assist, and he came out of camp with a lot of high praise as well. What did you see from him tonight?
He's just smart. He's reliable. For a young kid, his hockey IQ is very high, and he's able to adapt in these games. And, I like the way he hung in there when things probably weren't going our way. He played above pucks, made good decisions with the pucks, and it's nice to see he's calm at such a young age. So there was good things from him.
Cootes had a lot to say about Kiefer Sherwood and his leadership as well through training camp, and then he had the A on tonight. Why does Kiefer Sherwood make such a good leader for this group?
Well, he plays hard. He leads by example for sure. He's always giving you 100%. And we had, it was nice for him to have Cootes. Nice to have Sherwood in camp, show him along the way. But also, when he's going out, Sherwood playing the way he's playing, forechecking hard. There's less people paying attention to Cootes. So, they've done well together, and we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Sounds like this dude's making the show right out of camp, Harm. Man, oh man, I saw some people. And again, I am of the opinion, training camps, you got to try not to get too high. You got to try not to get too low. Really, that's a mantra for the regular season as well, and just life in general. But I saw some people throwing out, I wholeheartedly believe that Braden Cootes should be this team's second or third line center. And beyond the 9 games, they're talking beyond.
All right, let's pump the brakes there.
Now listen. The dude's played well. But I'll remind everybody, no matter how well he looks in training camp, like I don't care if he has 6 more of these games or 5 more of these games or whatever, right? The 9-game stint is one thing. That's a hard thing to pull off anyways, because they're going to have to waive, again, a player that they probably don't want to waive, like Atu Ratu's would have to get waived. You assume Linus Karlsson would be in that conversation, and that dude should be on this team. More on him and anyone else later. But my point being, they're going to have to waive players to make room for Cootes. So do you really want to do that for a 9-game audition? We've talked about that. But to the people that are throwing out the idea of, beyond 9 games, the dude's ready to play to see. It was a really solid first game. And my point isn't that, I need to see more in this camp. What I want to remind everybody is that he's an 18-year-old kid and he has physical growing to do. He is going to get stronger on his skates. He's going to get stronger going into puck battles and all that sort of stuff. And this is something he's even talked about already at training camp. And that's the biggest difference for what he needs to do. I think the takeaway, no matter how well he plays in this preseason, is that, wow, this is exciting. This guy could probably crack this roster next season. Not this season, but next season, right? This guy could probably crack the NHL roster. Follow a path of a Bo Horvat. You come right out of junior and you play, you play NHL games and you become an NHL regular. Like that's a path that Braden Cootes is certainly on right now. But that being said, putting him in this year, you're going to see the effects of that probably around like the 30-40 game mark. It's going to be really tough for Braden Cootes to keep that up because, again, he's just expelling so much energy when he goes in to win those puck battles, when he's going up against stronger players. Doing that each and every night is going to get exhausting after a while, and you're going to see a far worse version of Braden Cootes if you throw him in the show right now and keep him around all year. That's why I'm saying, and that's really my main point, is I don't care how well he plays this preseason. I shouldn't say that I care, but I mean, that won't sway my decision or opinion of if the Canucks should keep him on the team or not, because you're going to see the effects of that late in the season, I would think, if he stays.
Yeah, he's put himself in a position where if he continues to do this, he'll earn the potential 9-game NHL audition, but it's going to take a Herculean effort to really last beyond that. And I don't even know if that would be the best decision for his long-term development, to be totally honest with you.
What the 9 games? Sorry,
like beyond the 9 games, like a full season in the NHL.
Okay, yeah.
I'm on the same page as you. What's exciting about Cootes is we're contextualizing for his age, right? That he's 18 years old and doing this. And I think that's important to clarify, because let's say he was 21 years old. We would go, he can hang. He looks like he'll be able to hold his own in the NHL, but we wouldn't be nearly as excited. It's not like Cootes' performance, stripped of the context of his age, has been so dominant that you're going, he should be the 3C. Like he's that good right away. It's what makes it exciting is if he can already look like he can adequately hang at 18 years old, what does that mean for his long-term development and and potential. That's the lens to sort of view that through. And I'll also say this, he looks advanced defensively. I think it's going to be tough for him to really move the needle and drive offense and be really impactful at 5-on-5 at the NHL level in regular season games. And this is where there's a huge difference between being adequate in the NHL and actually being legitimately top 9 impactful, right? And I don't think Cootes is going to reach the latter level yet. Even in that preseason game last night, where I was impressed with his defensive details, his decision making with the puck, he wasn't outright dominating offensively in a way. And with play driving, where I'm going, oh, he'd be top 9 ready out of the gate and a potential 3C candidate. So that's important to just kind of clarify. And it's not so much that we're necessarily getting that the hype has gone too far. It's just remember that a huge reason, a huge factor behind the excitement is his age. And ultimately, I also think back to like a Marco Rossi, right? Rossi in the 2022-23 season, and their ages were different at the time, but Rossi dominated and had 6 points in 3 preseason games. I believe he led the NHL in preseason scoring that year. Dude wasn't ready for the NHL. He had 1 point in 19 games. He got the opportunity early on, but then he spent most of that year in the AHL. And it was the next year that he broke out as a full-time, impactful NHL forward. So that's worth sort of mentioning. And I just don't want expectations to become too high for what Cootes would do if he does continue on this trajectory and maybe even makes his team out of camp.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is a high floor player. That's what's so exciting about Cootes. But again, the same concern that I just brought up about how strong you have to be to play in the NHL and how it's going to take him a bit to get there, especially play center in the NHL for 82 games. There's a chance that he does need to spend some time in Abbotsford, not this season, but next season. Like, comes into camp, looks impressive, and follows the same path as Rossi that you're talking about, where, yeah, you look impressive in training camp like he has this year. You look impressive in the preseason like he has this year. And you come in, you earn that spot, and then by game 19 or 20 or whatever, you get sent down to the AHL. Again, that's not a failure for Cootes. He'll be 19 at that time. He'll be 19 years old. Again, like, just to kind of put a bow on the Cootes conversation, it's exciting because of the age he's doing it at, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We'll keep watching. It's exciting. It's exciting.
Even Aatu Räty is a good example of he looked terrific in training camp and preseason last year, and that was a sign of, all right, his development is on a positive trajectory. But then when he made the team, he lasted 3 games before the club realized, all right, he'd benefit from some AHL time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good recent example. Here's a heater of a question for you. It's from John Scaff. Who's better, Cootes or Lekkerimäki?
Lekkerimäki is going to need to. Well, also to sum up where we're at, I don't want to drift too far from the Lekkerimäki conversation because I've got thoughts on his performance last night. But also I feel like we should contextualize where the Canucks roster is sort of at and almost go through the exercise of looking at sort of who's a lock and how many jobs are up for grabs. And so what's the math? What's the equation on a guy like Cootes or Lekkerimäki,
Sure.
Carlson, Bain sort of making this team, right? So when I look at this roster, I've got DeBrusk, Kane, Höglander, O'Connor, Petey, Hedl, Bluger, Räty, Besser, Garland, and Sherwood as basically locks to make the 23-man roster. And Räty, the reason I'm putting him in as a lock is because he could have a bad training camp in preseason, which he hasn't, by the way. But even if he did have a bad training camp in preseason, because he's a centerman, they're not going to want to risk exposing him to waivers because somebody would probably claim him. So that he's got a ticket onto this team with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's 11 forwards. If you assume 2 goalies and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 defensemen, that would leave 2 slots for Carlson, Baines, Sasson, Lekkerimäki, and Cootes. 2 of those 5 would then make it on the 23-man roster. So that's kind of the equation that we're looking at. And right now, again, a lot of preseason hockey left to be played, but I'd probably give an early edge to Carlson. And then I think Lekkerimäki's stock, based on last night's preseason game, he's going to need to show more. If I had to guess today, I would assume that he would go back to the American League.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry, and I know everybody, when it comes to prospects, we're all very delicate about how we talk about them, but there was nothing against, there's no rule that Jonathan Lekkerimäki can't stand out in a training camp the way some of these other guys we're talking about have. Like, again, I'm not saying he's been awful. Yes, it's just a training camp, it's one preseason game, but he's a top prospect. Like, you're looking for a standout performance, and we haven't got it yet from Jonathan Lekkerimäki. And I think the thing that worries me, Harm, is, like, what's the baseline game, right? He's not going to kill penalties. He is not going to be, you don't want him on a fourth line. It goes back to the conversation that we had last year and years before that, where we said, don't do the Podkolzin thing. And I know different players, not a perfect example, but don't do the thing where you put him on the fourth line when he's not doing well, and then he goes up to the top six when he plays well, and then you're just bumping him up and down, press box, all over the place. Let him play in Abbotsford and get his game going, and then become ready to be an NHL top six winger. I think a lot of people were looking at it and saying, yes, right now should be that time that he's knocking on the door for an NHL top six spot. Let's remind everybody, got the opportunity out of training camp last year playing with Elias Pettersson. This year gets the opportunity playing with Filip Chytil. Hasn't done anything with it. Like, that matters. And maybe it's harsh to say about a prospect, but at some point, you get all these opportunities, you have to take it, and you have to go out and grab it. And he hasn't done that yet.
Yeah, I mean, last night you could tell that the power play is really the only area where he looks dangerous offensively, right? The left flank on the man advantage, you can see the way that he's able to find seams east-west. His shot is lethal. He rang one off the crossbar, but at 5-on-5, very quiet. He needs to do more to drive offense. I'm not as low on Lekkerimäki as you are. I'd say one thing that bodes well for his long-term chances, you talk about that, like, base game, and I agree with you. He's going to need to score to be a full-time NHL player. But
yeah,
I'll say, for a guy who just turned 21 this summer, his defensive game is very polished, especially for an undersized winger. Positionally sound. You see him always scanning and able to sort of break plays up. And on breakouts in the defensive zone, as a winger, he's really consistently able to get pucks out. So offensively at 5-on-5, that's where, all right, you need to drive more. You need to be more dynamic. You need to be more dangerous. I think specifically his edge work needs to get better, right? We know strength-wise he's going to need to beef up, but as an undersized winger, you can still find ways to protect the puck if you're able to turn on a dime in quick areas and have those sharp cutbacks in a way where some of these bigger defensemen who can't skate as well can't really catch up to you. That's what Lekkerimäki's kind of lacking. Skating is I think what needs to take the next step, both in terms of edge work and then just straight line speed would help make him even more dynamic and dangerous, because I think he's already got NHL level IQ, both offensively and defensively. I think he's already great on the power play. It's just speed, his overall skating, and then beefing up is kind of what he needs to work on, which, again, considering he just turned 21, I'm not too worried about. Like, let's not get too carried away with, for example, we're talking about Tom Willander as, he's 20 years old, and we're showing so much patience that he's probably going to need American League time. Let's not remember that because Lekkerimäki is one of the youngest players in his draft class, the age difference between those two guys is only about 6 months or so.
Yeah, fair, but it also, right? I don't know.
Think about all the patience you've been. It's because Lekkerimäki made the adjustment to North America last year. So you think because he's already got pro games under his belt that he should like there's a where we're more likely to give Willander the benefit of the doubt because it's like, oh, this is his first time in North America.
Yeah.
Which is true, but in essence, they're only 6 months apart. So if we're showing Willander grace and we're saying, hey, don't worry, it's fine, he's gonna need time to develop, then we should, I think, extend that to Lekkerimäki too, especially because I think the Abbotsford run, like we're talking about, he needs to get faster and he needs to bulk up. Well, he didn't have the ideal offseason to do that because Abbotsford went so deep in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't help that 18-year-old Braden Cootes is doing what he's doing at this training camp on Lekkerimäki, I'll say that. It also doesn't help that the more time you spend in the AHL, where you put up numbers like you did last year, tailed off toward the end, but whatever. Like, that's aside from the point. When you start looking at statistical comparables, the more you just dominate the AHL, the more those comparables start to become names who never did anything at the NHL level. I'm just gonna say that. Like, I'm not saying that's going to be Lekkerimäki, but the longer you spend in the A and look pretty invisible at an NHL training camp, the more likely it is that you're not going to make it. And look, I know I sound super negative right now. I'm just pretty low on Lekkerimäki after this training camp and after last night's preseason game. But again, it's what we've been saying all week. One preseason game could change it all and make me look like an idiot. Right now, I'm pretty disappointed with his showing so far.
Yeah, that's fair. What I'd remind people is he's 21, not 23. If this was next year or the year after, then it'd be, oh, this is really, really concerning. Like this dude might end up being a draft bust, but it's too early to.
I'm sorry. Is he going to start training camp in the top 6 for the next 2 years? Like, is that what we're talking about?
I mean, he just turned 21 this summer, man.
Okay, I mean, just take an opportunity and run with it at some point. That's all. Like, Braden Cootes just turned 14 years old, it seems. He's getting the opportunity and he's running with it. I'm sorry, you're allowed to run with an opportunity that you keep getting when you're young. You're allowed to do that. And all I'm saying is I wanted to see it from Lekkerimäki. I wanted to see it. I haven't seen it.
Fair enough, but he also averaged more than half a goal per game in the AHL at 20 years old.
Which is why
look historically at how many guys have done that.
Okay.
I mean, not every guy. Okay, just because he's not a full-time top 6 player at the age of 21 doesn't mean he's cooked as a prospect and he has no future.
Okay, but this is my point, Harm. You're allowed to impress at an NHL training camp and not be a lock to play in the top 6 of an NHL top 6. But to do nothing, which is what we're seeing. We're seeing nothing right now, right? Like, this is what we're talking about, is that
it's been one preseason game also.
It's been one. Okay, but it's the same thing at training camp last year.
Okay, look at we just talked about Rossi. Marco Rossi wasn't ready at 21 years old to play in the NHL. He had 1 assist in 19 games, and he went back to the A for the entire season. And then it was at age 22 that he broke out with 40 points.
Okay, so hang on. He has a big Marco Rossi we're talking about has a big season in the AHL where he puts up a ton of points, and then he comes to NHL training camp, and then he's an NHL player. I know he did it a year later.
But that's the point. Like, it's a year later. That's the whole point. Okay, that's the whole point. When guys are...
So then we're looking at 2 years for Lekkerimäki to dominate the A, is what you're saying.
I'm not necessarily saying that. I mean, who knows? He could play really well in the A and then be ready mid-season. I mean, sure. Quads, you're acting like because he's this right now that he's not going to improve. Like, you talked about DPD. DPD last year did not look good in training camp and preseason. Look how quickly he improved, and by midseason was up in the NHL and making an impact.
All right. We'll see where it goes. We got some really good feedback in the chat from this. Johnny Canuck said, and not the actual Johnny Canuck, I don't think, said Lekkerimäki's not a top prospect. He's a trade chip. John Scaff said trade Lekkerimäki and Willander for Mason McTavish. Nick Pocek, I can't wait until Lekkerimäki scores 2 in the next preseason game. And Quad says, write it down, Jacob. Calder winner. That's a good one. All right. Anything else that you wanted to get to from that preseason game? Our poll question's also about it, but is there anything else that you wanted to talk about. Any other underwhelming players that you want to give huge compliments to?
I hate you, Quads. That's all I want to say. I'm not even. I hate you.
No, seriously, anything else?
Let me look through. I think we should briefly talk about Willander.
Oh, of course, yes.
Okay, good and bad. Last night, I thought he was fine overall in terms of his performance. The D zone retrievals thing is, I think, going to be the biggest area, and we've talked about this before. But that preseason game proved again that he needs to work on that before he's NHL ready. You see the difference between him and Mancini, right? On breakouts, going back when pucks are dumped into the defensive zone, the difference in composure, decisiveness, and just an overall ability to make plays. Willander would benefit, I think, from some time to be the guy in Abbotsford, top pair, PK, power play, all situations, and just build up his confidence.
Yeah.
Now, the good news, what I liked seeing from him is how well he defends the rush. I think that is his asset that's most close to being NHL ready, and it's because of his skating. There were a couple of sequences, one on Matty Beniers, where Beniers had picked up a lot of steam in the neutral zone, and Beniers isn't just an NHL player. We're talking a plus skating top 6 caliber NHL player. Beniers, by the time he reached the Canucks blue line, he was already skating at top gear. Willander was able to maintain a pretty good gap, funnel him to the outside, and then just ride him into the board, separate Beniers from the puck. Just makes the defensive stop right then and there. There was another play where I think DPD got caught up, and then Seattle sprung Shane Wright for a potential rush, and Willander's gap was so good. He was right up in Wright's grill, and there was no rush chance generated because of that. That's encouraging, and we didn't get a chance to see those qualities in training camp just because that's not there's no environment where you could watch him defend the rush. But that's a positive. But overall, I think we're becoming more and more confident with each viewing that he'd benefit from AHL time, and that's okay.
And like we've said from the start, that's okay. It's not okay for Jonathan Lekkerimäki, but it's okay for Tom Willander. No, I'm joking. We're not bringing that up again. But in all seriousness, you bring up the rush stuff, and it's such a good point, Harm, because like, call me crazy, that's one of the harder things to teach a defenseman how to do, right? A lot of the other stuff, you think you can teach a defenseman, like, hey, there's going to be pressure coming from here. You're already a good skater. Learn where that pressure is coming from. And again, I think a lot of the things he has to add to his game are things that you can learn. I think that's the really positive thing about Tom Willander, is that the tools are there, and now it's just, okay, go put it all together. He's going to get that chance down in Abbotsford, it looks like. And like we've been saying since the start of camp, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I don't think people should be down on Willander very much at all. We have a couple anyone else's about other players from this game.
Chat, note the change in tone, how soft and gentle the analysis is on Willander versus Lekkerimäki, 6 months older. Willander, take all the time you need, which is right, by the way. And then Lekkerimäki, just 6 months older. Dude's a bust. Trade him now.
I didn't say that. That was the chat. But that being said, we're talking about a guy fresh out of college. If we were talking about Jonathan Lekkerimäki, fresh out of the SHL or fresh out of college, it'd be different. I care how old they are. I shouldn't say I don't care how old they are. But to me, like, what you are able to do in the previous league, like what Lekkerimäki was able to do in the AHL, raises the expectations, right? Like if Willander had a huge season in the AHL and then looked underwhelming in camp, I'd probably be saying the same thing.
It's fair to say that he's been underwhelming through camp and preseason. I'm not trying to disagree with that. I have been a little bit disappointed. I'm not going to lie. But again, you talk about the things Willander lacks, you're confident he can improve on. Oh, for Lekkerimäki, it's the physical attributes of getting bigger and stronger and getting faster.
Is he going to be able to do that in season?
But he doesn't need. he doesn't need to figure it out right now at 21.
Okay. What if Abbotsford makes the playoffs again, and then we bookmark that again and say, oh well, he had a short summer, he can't.
Okay, well then
possibly
that's
get
not
there."
an excuse.
Okay.
Like if it's 2
perfect.
summers in a row, like okay, put it this way, because I agree, you can't just give a guy rope forever. If
Sure.
this was happening at next year's training camp, then alarm bells would really be going off for me, because at that point you're 22 years old. If you're gonna develop into a top 6 player at 22, like that makes a difference each year, because prospects can improve so much in this window. Like 22, you're at the end of the window that you typically have between 16 to 22, where each year you have the possibility of taking a significant step.
I like it. Jacob, write that down. If it's a problem next year,
Yeah,
the alarm bells going off.
if 100%, if Lekkerimäki looks this way at next year's camp, he's in trouble.
Okay, cool. I can live with that. Maybe I'm a year early on it. I'll live with that. Nick Pocek says me talking about Willander and Lekkerimäki is the Gordon Ramsay "Oh dear gorgeous" and "You donkey" meme template. That was good. People were saying that's the most fired up they've heard you in a long time. We haven't got a "I hate you" quads in at least a year. So that was that was an amped up harm.
It was a really good conversation though.
It was, of course, as Cam Horwath said in the Facebook chat. Okay, let's get to our poll question. It's kind of about last night's game. Last night's game. So let's get to our poll question. It's a presentation of our friends over at Greta, which by now you know is a great spot to watch the big game. Come do that with us. We're going to have our watch parties returning this year. The first one is going to be in October. When the Canucks are on the road, typically, is when we have these watch parties. They're a ton of fun. You get to hang out with us, watch the game, bring your friends, enjoy the street food menu, enjoy the bar, and of course, enjoy the arcade games. I just throw out arcade cards to everyone who will accept them. So make sure you come on down to Greta. We'll have more info on the watch parties coming soon. Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. All right. Our poll question today: who impressed you the most last night in the Canucks' first preseason game against the Seattle Kraken? Our options were Victor Mancini, Braden Cootes, Nils Höglander, and other. Reply below. All right. Leading the vote with 47.8% is Victor Mancini, followed with 41% by Braden Cootes, 7.1% say Nils Höglander, and 4.2% say other. DPD was getting some DPD was getting some love.
The right answer should be Tolopilo.
Tolopilo got
but
two
he's just
picks.
not exciting.
Yeah, Tolopilo got two people who replied. I like that. And then there was this one. I just saw this. I'm not joking. I didn't make this up. This is a response. Hard to pick just one. It's easier to find the guy that doesn't look good right now, and that's Lekkerimäki. More and more people are saying this.
No. Did I say he looked good last night? He didn't.
I know. Okay, back to the poll question. Who did impress you the most? Like, to me, it's Braden Cootes. I think I was more impressed by him than Mancini, but it's a 1-2. It's Cootes number 1, Mancini number 2, because I was saying it all camp long. Okay, he looks great in training camp, but these are drills. You know, there was a sequence where Tyler Myers let up on Cootes where he could have absolutely laid him out in a drill because Cootes had his head down skating through the neutral zone. And guess what? When you play NHL preseason games, the other team isn't going to let up. They're going to blow you up in those instances. Myers chose not to blow up Cootes. So what I was saying at the time was, okay, I need to see it in some preseason games. And so far, so good for Braden Cootes. So he gets my vote.
Yeah, it's between Mancini and Cootes for relative to expectations, because Tolopilo was awesome. And I think you've heard asked who was their best player. And in the time that he did play before Young got into the game, I mean, the number of rush chances that Tolopilo had to face and stop, he was outstanding. Either Mancini or Cootes is a totally defensible pick for relative to expectations. Who impressed you the most? You spoke a lot about Cootes. And Mancini, it was nice to see him take the charge. And like I said, there is going to be an element of calming his game down a little bit, just so he isn't making the one or two mistakes that he was last game. But it's also a different role, right? In that kind of preseason game, he's expected to kind of be the guy. Whereas when you have Quinn Hughes, Philip Hronek, Marcus Pettersson, Tyler Myers in the lineup, he just needs to simplify his game and doesn't have to do as much. But overall, Mancini was just driving the bus offensively and defensively. So I really liked his game.
We got a write-in vote from Negative Capable for Joe LeBate.
Dude, he got under their skin, man.
In all seriousness, do you know who I was reminded of watching Joe LeBate last night? Sammy Blais. Again, they lose Sammy Blais in Abbotsford. Joe LeBate, can he fill that role kind of, like you said, that guy who gets under the opposition's skin? Jacob, you saw a ton of Sammy Blais. Are you with me on this, that Joe LeBate could easily become the next Sammy Blais down in Abbotsford?
Well, yeah, I think the points that you just mentioned, being able to get under the skin of their opponents, sure. And well, we saw Blais do that all playoffs long, to the point where he crossed the line and took some stupid penalties. But I mean, Blais was also scoring, especially early in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. Like, he was automatic on the power play. I don't know if that's going to be Joe LeBate, but I think certainly he's going to turn into a well-liked player down in Abbotsford if he keeps this up.
All right. Let's get to anyone else. We'll kind of put a bow on the conversation about last night's game. Or did I have something else on it? No, that was it. Yeah. Okay, let's get to anyone else, which is a presentation of the Vancouver Canadians, whose season came to a close, but we want to thank them for their support all summer long. Take a look at next year's season ticket options and make sure you don't miss out. For more information, visit CanadiansBaseball.com. Calcios Tarico in the chat with the first anyone else I want to get to. We have so many, so let's try to get to everyone's questions. Let's try not to take too long on anyone. Stillman. Is Chase Stillman looking like a player? Yes, he's looking like a player, but at what level? Oh yeah, speaking of Lekkerimäki, he got bumped down. We didn't even talk about that. He got bumped down the lineup for Chase Stillman. Chase Stillman getting a bump up the lineup last night, and he looked good. Like, yeah, he looked good. Look, I I was kind of joking about this with you at camp. Stillman did stand out to me, but again, the level that you have to get to be actually knocking on the door for an NHL opportunity, Stillman's got some stuff to prove in the AHL still. Now, can he become like a Max Sasson, a guy who gets called up and is knocking on the door? Maybe, but I don't think the conversation extends much further beyond that from what we've seen so far. He needs to do more. Not at preseason. I mean, he needs to go do more in the AHL. Again, let's not forget, this is a league that he hasn't been able to figure out, unlike a guy like Jonathan Lekkerimäki, who's, the second coming. Stillman, it's been a good camp for him. And again, a solid first preseason game. What does it mean in the grand scheme of things? Let's see what he does in Abbotsford.
Yeah, you summed it up really well. He's been a positive under the radar surprise. When he was traded here, I'm not going to lie, I didn't really put any stock into it because he had 12 points all year in the AHL. And it's not like he only played 30 games or whatever. He was healthy for most of the season and he only had 12 points. And the bar to make the NHL is so high that if you're not even a good AHL player and you're 22 years old, your odds of becoming an NHL player are really, really slim. But watching him in camp and at preseason, his tools have been better than what I imagined. He's quicker than I thought. He's got some good size to him. The penalty shot goal is obviously nice. He's got some hands, at least. They're not completely stoned. Yeah, they're still not great. But
the last guy who wore 61 with Stillman on the back of his jersey. He's better than him, it looks like.
Yeah, but like you said, it's more, let's see what he does in Abbotsford. And it's just, I'm going to be keeping more of an eye on him in the AHL than I probably would have otherwise.
Exactly. Can he become an AHL player? That's the next conversation that we're having about him. Okay, Coltrane Yan in the chat said, can we talk about Vitaly Kravtsov? Again, a guy who's gotten some opportunity. It's been okay. I don't see much more from Kravtsov than I did the last time he was here. Is it safe to say that, Harm? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? What do you think of Kravtsov so far?
Yeah, he's maybe a little bit faster, but he's going to have to beat out Carlson, Sasson, Baines. I mean, Lekkerimäki isn't exactly putting up a fight, but he's going to have to beat him. He's going to have to beat Braden Cootes. There's just a lot of competition for a lot of these final forward roster spots. I'll reserve judgment, and I'm not going to fully write him off until we see him in preseason games. But so far in camp and in the scrimmage, I'm not overly optimistic that he's going to make a surprise bid and be a guy that moves the needle.
John Scaff with this one in the chat. How bad is that Forbert signing at $2 million with these defensemen pushing for a spot? Look, this is a pro Derek Forbert show, and we're not going to stand for that. But what I will say in defense of John's comment is Forbert's started slow 2 years in a row now. Like, he didn't look good at camp last year. He didn't even look good to start the season last year. Granted, he was playing with Noah Juulsen for most of those minutes, if memory serves. And obviously we know what kind of disarray the Canucks blue line as a whole was in last year. That being said, this is a guy who got better as the season went on. It's a guy who his penalty killing ability was actually elite, especially in the second half of the season. And that's what earned him this contract. Now, what I will say in defense of this comment is that ideally, maybe not by mid-season, but by like next year, the Canucks, with all of these young defensemen they have, are calling teams and saying, hey, we have a really solid penalty killer here in Derek Forbert, but we don't need him anymore because we have really good defensemen coming up and pushing the pace, and we like their game more at 5-on-5, and one of them has become an elite penalty killer as well. Like, that's the best case scenario. That's what you're kind of hoping for. And again, at $2 million, like, Derek Forbert's not a bad money contract, I don't think.
Yeah, not at all. I would do that contract again all over. You're not going to have any NHL head coach comfortable with the idea of, just your bottom of the line of defense options are all rookies, right? They're Mancini, Willander, DPD, no matter how promising some of those guys look. Oh, and P.O. Joseph, right? Like, that's just not enough. Any NHL head coaching staff would want a veteran presence, especially one that can help out on the PK. And that's what Forbert is. And like you said, he looked really bad in camp and at times in preseason as well, how slow he looked. You were going, oh boy, this may not age very well. And yet, especially once he had a competent partner to play with who could also skate pucks out, he was one of their underrated stabilizing forces. And with Forbert, he doesn't need to be in the lineup every game. But as a 6'7" at $2 million, I have no problems with that contract at all.
Chris Martiska in the chat, he came up with a few. He said, is it time to sign Roslovic, not for the 2C, but as a scoring winger for Heedle's line? Not sure if Lekkerimäki is ready to be an everyday NHL player. Roslovic has the speed to play with Heedle. I'm going to say no. I'm assuming Jack Roslovic's still looking for a lot of money. Again, I'd have to see the numbers to say yes or no definitively, but I will say, just because Lekkerimäki isn't ready to be an everyday NHL player, or at least it looks that way right now, Kiefer Sherwood's not going to skate with Braden Cootes and Arshdeep Bains when the season opens. Is Connor Garland going to stay with Teddy Bluger and Nils Höglander? Potentially. Potentially that's something they try, but I don't think I'm looking at this Canucks team saying, oh my gosh, there's such a massive hole right now on the second line. Would you like to maybe have an upgrade? Yeah, maybe. But if the money doesn't make sense, the money doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get him league minimum and try him in that second line RW spot, then all of a sudden it would give you the luxury of being able to use Garland as the main driver alongside Nils Höglander for your third line. And now all of a sudden the weakness that you have at the 3C spot, it's sheltered a little bit because you have two really good play driving wingers in Höglander and Garland that can pick up a lot of the slack and make it easier for whatever center is filling into that role. The problem, as you said, is how much would it cost, right? The deeper we get into preseason, how much does his ask potentially fall? And keep in mind, if Roslovic gets to the point where his demand falls below a certain threshold, the pool of teams that would be potentially interested in him would expand as well. And for him, it could become an opportunity. It could become a case of, well, where could I go and potentially put up the most points? The other thing that doesn't make this a slam dunk is a second line of Heedle, Kane, Roslovic. I don't know if defensively you can have Kane and Roslovic together on opposite wings, the same way that I look at I don't think you could do a Kane, Hedel, Höglander second line because Höglander and Kane are both below average defensive players. And that's the same thing with Roslovic, because he's higher risk with the puck, not always the most trustworthy defensively. He's not a complete liability, but can you have him and Evander Kane on the same line when you also know that Philip Hedel is at best average defensively? I don't think so. So look, if it's a league minimum kind of thing, you can get him for $1 million. Sure, I'm all over it. But if the ask is 2-3 million, then I would still kind of be hesitant to commit that kind of cap space to him.
Okay, Chris Martisi with another one in the chat. He said, is it too early to compare Todd Harvey versus Judd Brackett? Feels as though Harvey's staff has done a much better job at finding talent in later rounds of the draft. It's interesting. I haven't heard anyone really bring that up, but I look like it's gonna be one of those things where we look at the drafting records in a few years. I don't know if it's too early, but I'm definitely not doing any think pieces or anything for Canucks Army about comparing Todd Harvey with Judd Brackett, because let's remember, folks, we are talking glowingly about a lot of these prospects, but it's not like during the Judd Brackett years we were just like, oh yeah, all these prospects suck. We were talking about them, and we were talking about them in a positive way as well. But so far, I don't know. Like, I think they've done a really good job. They've done a really good job finding talent in the later rounds, it looks like, right now at least.
They've done well, but you're going to have to wait for, as you were kind of saying, some of these prospects actually hit as NHL players before we can start
Declare
celebrating.
winning. Yeah.
Yeah, and say who's winning and who's losing. So
yeah. Okay. Travis Wall, friend of the show, said Harm mentioned 8 D-men. What would be your guess for those 8 D-men to make the Canucks? Okay, I'll go first. Quinn Hughes. Do you agree? Quinn Hughes, Philip Hronek, Marcus Pettersson, Tyler Myers, Derek Forbert, Elias Pettersson, number 6, P.O. Joseph, number 7, and number 8, Victor Mancini.
Yeah, those are my 8.
Are they for sure going to go 8, do you think? Because I would love Victor Mancini.
It's not for sure.
With Tom Willander. I would love that.
Okay. If Mancini, the problem with that is if Mancini keeps playing like this, how are you going to turn to him and say, yeah, just go back to Abbotsford again?
Oh, sure. So like, sorry. Yeah. So what I should have said is I either want DPD or Mancini going to Abbotsford. Unless both of them are.
It could be a rotation, man.
It could be. Actually, that's true. It could be. Because the one thing I don't want is P.O. Joseph going down and one of these guys sitting around and just not playing.
No. P.O. Joseph's not going to go down.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
P.O. Joseph's the perfect guy to park in the press box for long stretches.
Exactly. So what I was trying to get at is that I don't want to see one of these guys just sit in the press box all the time. I want young players playing. That's what I like to see.
Fully agree. And my thought process with the 8D was it becomes a rotation between and a competition between DPD and Mancini to sort of prove who deserves being that 6th defenseman on an everyday basis, especially because in October, the Canucks have a long road trip, and it can sometimes be a good idea to just carry the extra defenseman as opposed to having a 14th forward. So that was my thought process, but you're absolutely right. If one of them separates where, let's say it's DPD that looks better than Mancini, and Mancini can't really draw into the lineup, then he should absolutely go back to the A.
All right.
And vice versa.
Yep, absolutely agree. Some news today. The Canucks have signed Riley Patterson and Gabriel Sherratt to entry-level contracts. This coming after both of those guys were sent back to their junior clubs as part of the first 9 players sent home from Canucks training camp. The Canucks preseason roster had its first cuts on Sunday. Patterson and Sherratt were both a part of it, but they earned themselves entry-level contracts. This was a quote from Alvin. Over the past couple of weeks, we've been impressed by a number of our young players at both the showcase in Seattle and training camp in Penticton. We're happy to sign 2 of them, Riley Patterson and Gabriel Sherratt. Riley's a right shot center prospect who has made strides working with our development group the past couple of years, while Gabriel has good drive, work ethic, and tenacity, and also has a nose for the net. Of course, Patterson selected in the 2024 draft as a 4th round pick, and Sherratt this past season. 6th round pick. So, hey, 6th round pick getting an ELC. Good for him. That's always just a nice little story. All right. I had one last thing. I'm talking about Linus Karlsson. While we were driving home from Penticton, Tyson Cole hung back in Penticton and spoke with Linus Karlsson. And Karlsson, who doesn't usually give many good quotes and doesn't really talk very much, put it pretty bluntly. You can read the story up now at CanucksArmy.com. He said it's time to make the Canucks roster. Talked about his camp and just said, like, this offseason, that was his focus, is just, it's time. It's time to make this team. He has his sights firmly set on the NHL roster, as he should, and his play has backed that up. It's been a really good camp for him. You're hoping for some solid performances in preseason games, but it was cool to hear Karlsson kind of not be like, oh yeah, wherever I end up, I'm happy. I'm just happy to be here. He was like, no, it's time to make the roster. You can go read the whole story at CanucksArmy.com. Did I have anything else? Did you want to say anything about Karlsson? Did you read the story? Did you see these quotes?
I mean, he's 25 or 26 years old now at this point.
Yeah.
It is time, right? It's sort of now or never. He's 99 born, so he's turning 26 in November. He's proven pretty much everything there is to prove in the American League, and he played well in the NHL down the stretch. It's now or never, really.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day. Jacob, can I bet on World Series winner? Is that available somewhere?
I would imagine it is.
Okay, let me see.
If you go into the futures section on Bet365.
The last I saw, hold on, where'd it go? Yep. MLB Futures 2025.
I've got the World Series here. You want to probably bet Mariners, right? I can give you the line. Mariners currently have the third best odds at plus 600. Blue Jays fourth, just behind at plus 650. Phillies are number one at plus 450. Dodgers slot in there at 2 at 475.
Who's number one? Phillies,
Dodgers, Mariners, Blue Jays.
Okay, because I saw another place that shall never be named had the Mariners at number one. So I was thinking I was going to take Mariners at the best odds. They're not at the best odds. Crazy. We're taking Mariners.
Better value.
Plus 600. And Jacob, we'd have to really go back and find it. But I placed a plus 10,000 odds bet on the Mariners to win the World Series for one of my.
I believe you did.
I did that definitely before the season started. I was like plus 10,000. Okay.
Mariners. I don't know. I don't think it was 10,000, but it's probably plus 1,000.
No. It was for sure. Oh
there's
no
way it was plus 10,000.
I'm getting confused with the Conn Smythe bets I made around the same time.
But still, that'd be a good cash out opportunity right now.
You and Harm talk baseball. I gotta find this. Hang on.
Are the Jays? Do they really deserve to be that far high up, considering their pitching? Not just the bullpen, but their starting pitching looks kind of shaky these days too.
I think they'll be okay. Harm. Something to keep in mind. I think the Jays have the best record of any playoff team against teams over 500. So,
oh wow, okay.
I think being the number two American League, number two for the American League in World Series odds makes sense. And they're going to have home field. They are the best home field team in the American League, just behind the Phillies for being best home field team in all of baseball. So when you have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, which I think the Jays are 3 wins away from clinching, it's going to give them a massive leg up. So
I was just worried because as a lifelong diehard Jays fan who has never wavered in my support and fandom of the team, I was reading today and a little bit worried when the Athletic, they have great baseball coverage, and they were sort of breaking down every playoff bound team's starting pitching for the playoffs and kind of ranking them. And the Blue Jays were, I think, like 14th out of 15th.
Which I think is a little low.
They've got pedigree guys.
Yeah, and Gosman's been really good recently. Like Gosman in his last 5 starts, I don't think he's given up more than 1 earned run in each, or I think he might have had 1 bad start in there. But Gosman's been really good. Bieber's been good, and then hey, you never know. You've got a rookie in Trey Savage who might just make a name for himself in the postseason. Chris Bassett's been fine. And I mean, hey, Berrios and Scherzer have really struggled. So I think that's probably where that came from, that a couple of their big name, highest paid pitchers aren't necessarily performing. But I don't know. I think if Bo Bichette comes back and the offense gets hot again, like they've been, it's been a roller coaster offense at times this year where for a couple of weeks they look like the best hitting team of all time. And then for a couple of weeks, they can barely muster 2 runs a game. If they start the playoffs kind of just before the peak of that roller coaster, I think they'll be all right.
Plus 2,500 was what it was.
There you go. Good work.
Took me
Good
so
stuff,
long
man.
to find, but plus 2,500. All right. Anything? I actually totally tuned out to what you guys were talking about. Did you talk ball? Did I need to do anything?
Yeah, we were talking about like Jay's pitching and
Do I need to do
all
anything
that.
other than close the show?
No, you're good.
Beautiful. Then let's do that. For my co-host, Harmon Dial, Jonathan Lekkerimäki's #1 fan, and Jacob Lassar, our technical producer. My name is Nick Woodrelli. We'll see you tomorrow, folks. Thanks for watching another episode of Canucks Conversation.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.